Hello everyone and welcome to Advanced Java Lesson 5. In this lesson, we will add levels and we will add a start screen. We will also have a few extra things, so just get ready for a lot of different projects and work time. First, we will do some review. So the first review question is, how should you loop through projectiles when potentially removing them? So feel free to pause the video, think about it, and unpause when you're ready to hear the answer. You should loop through them backward when potentially removing them. Next, why use the animation function? You use it so we can constantly update the objects on the screen, their position, what they're doing, and so on. Now that we have a working project, let's add a level as well as a cheat key to skip levels. If you complete the second level, you will be brought to a winning screen, and if you lose, you will restart the game. So what do you think should happen when you go to the next level? In this version, we're teaching, more enemies will be added, but you can also feel free to add your own adjustments and additions. So now what I want you to do is I want you to create an instance variable called level and set it to 1 initially. Then in the screen class, create a function called goToNextLevel, which will increase the level by 1 and will increase the amount of enemies and populate the enemy and fast enemy array list with new enemies that start at the right end of the screen and start at a random Y position. Call this function when the cheat key O is pressed, and also when all enemies in the list are not visible. That means that the player has destroyed all enemies. Make sure that the second check is done in the animate function so it's constantly updated, and you'll be looking at the cheat key in the listener class. So go ahead, pause the video, work on these tasks, and resume when you're ready to keep going. Okay, so now that we've done this, let's just quickly check what we've done so far. So at the moment, you should have created an integer called level. It should be starting at 1. Then the next thing that we want to make sure we have is a goToNextLevel function. So let's see. So we have a goToNextLevel. We're going to increase the level. Then one thing you really want to do is you want to make sure you're clearing your enemies and your fast enemies, because as we mentioned before, there are 2 ways to get to this, and one of the ways is from within the animate. If both enemy lists are 0, then you go to the next level, which means that obviously enemies are clear. But then the other way is through the cheat key that you've made in listener, and in this case enemies might not be empty. So in that case, you don't want to add 5 enemies on top of the 5 you already have. So make sure you clear your enemies and fast enemies list before you add to them. So when you're preparing for different levels, you want to make sure that you're preparing it so it can add enemies for level 1 and level 2. So in this case, what this example did is it just added some base enemies, and then if the level is 2, it'll just add some extra enemies. You could do something like this or something else. Now, how can we reset the game if the player has lost? That means they have less than 1 life. We can do this by resetting the amount of lives and setting the level to 0 and then calling the goToNextLevel function. Doing this will automatically make the level 1 and populate the enemy and fast enemy array list. So go ahead and work on that and unpause the video when you are done. So let's take a look at what that looks like now. So over here, we're going to be working in the animate function because we want to be constantly checking if they're out of lives. So here we're checking if lives are less than or equal to 0. The less than honestly is not necessary. You could just say is equal to 0 or is less than 1. Then we're just going to set the lives to 3, and we're going to set the level to 0. Then we're going to call the goToNextLevel, so it just resets it all and it sets it to level 1 and it's all ready to go. If you have more time or you want to try something new, you could go ahead and add a 3rd level. Now we will be adding a end screen where if they won, they'll go ahead and see that screen. So to do this, I want you to go ahead and create a variable called game over and initially set it to false. When the player has defeated the second level, so this is in the go to next level function, set game over to true and bring them to a winning end screen. In the winning end screen, the ship, enemies, and projectiles should no longer appear. So think for a moment about how you can do this and then go ahead and try doing this yourself. Okay, now that you've hopefully had some time to work it out yourself, I'll just go over the answer. If yours is working fine, that's totally fine. You keep that. I'm just going to show you one possibility of how you could have done that. So we have our game over. At the beginning, it's going to be false. We just started our game. It's not going to be over yet. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the go to next level. And we're saying, hey, if we just got past level 2, then that means if we add another level, we're at level 3, but we don't have a level 3. So our game is now over, and we're just going to return. We're not going to change the level. We're just going to return. And then in our animate, so we're going to find our animate, and now that game over is true, over here, we added an if statement that said we're only going to show all of these, or we're only going to move all of them if the game is not over. So now that it's over, we're no longer going to move it. Additionally, in our paint component, we're only drawing them if the game is not over. But now that it's over, instead, we're going to draw something that says you won. Now, let's go ahead and add stars to the background. So first, I want you to just try and think about how you can add stars to the background of your game using shapes and also using animation. So try implementing this on your own before we show you one way you can approach this. Now that you've hopefully had some time to work on it yourself, if you're happy with your solution, you can totally keep it that way, but we'll just show you one way of doing it. And this is by creating a star class. By first creating a star class that implements drawable and does all of these. So what it does is you pass in a X and a Y value. Oh, no, sorry. Let's go over that one more time. So you have X and Y as instance variables. Then you set them up where X and Y will both be random numbers. Then over here for move, it's going to move the star to the left, and then it's going to reset the Y value to a random number if it reaches the end of the screen, and it's going to reset the X value so it's on the rightmost part of the screen, so it's starting at the beginning. Then for the draw me, it's just going to draw the star as a small rectangle or ellipse. If you want, you can make it an image. That's totally fine too. So go ahead and quickly work on this if you don't already have your own version of the stars, and then I'll show you a possible solution in a moment. Okay, so after you're done with this, real quick, just add the stars to your game by creating an array of stars, which means the size is always the same, in your screen class, and then loop through them to draw them. And then additionally, make sure that in your animate function, you are looping through them again to make sure that they are moving. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at that. So over here, we have our star function. It's pretty basic. Over here, you can see we're resetting the X here. We're setting the Y to a random number. And then in screen class, we're creating our array of stars. And then here, you can see how we're using a loop to go ahead and do it. And since we're just adding new stars, it's super simple. And this is way easier than having 20 lines of creating new stars. Later, within the paint component, we want to make sure that we're actually drawing the stars. And arrays do not have for each loop, so you just need to use a normal for loop. And then additionally, in the animate, just make sure that you're still moving those stars. You don't want them to just stay in one place. Okay, so now that we have this, we have some even more advanced projects. So if you are happy with this project as is, or you have some other vision about what you want to add or what you want it to look like, I completely encourage you to just go do whatever you want to do, add your own things. But if you maybe are interested in some of these options and don't really know where to start, you could totally stick around for the rest of the video and kind of just listen along to what these different options are. So the first thing that we'll be doing is we will be creating a start screen. So we will add a start button where you press it to start the game and show all the different objects on the screen. Then we're also going to add a restart button on the win screen where you can restart the game. And similarly to the game over boolean, we're going to need a game start boolean. So real quick, just go ahead and add a game start boolean. Okay, now I want you to go ahead and add the following imports. We're going to need those for the button, so just at the top of your code in your screen class. And then I want you to create two instance variables, one that's called start button and one that is called restart button. Then to actually set them, you're going to be using code like this where you set it to a new button. You're going to put the text inside of it, and then you'll set the bounds using the X, Y, width, and height values. Finally, you want to make sure you add the action listener so you can actually tell if you're clicking it, and you set focusable to true. Then throughout the different game states, you can use add and remove to add or remove the button. Finally, you want to make sure you have a action performed function where within it you will get the e.getSource to check if you're clicking a button, and if you are clicking it, you can do whatever code. Make sure that you're repeating after and you're requesting focus and setting focusable to true afterward. So now go ahead, add those imports, create a start button, create a restart button, add and remove the buttons in Paint component when they should be shown, and create an action performed method to check if the button has been pressed, and create a condition to switch to the next game state. So pause the video, try to work on this, and I will go over the solution in a moment. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. Give me one moment, skip ahead. There we go. Sorry, this is not clicking for some reason. Oh, sorry, let's try this one more time. There we go. Okay, thank you for your patience. So what we're going to do over here is you want to make sure that you're adding your button imports. So JButton, action listener, action event if you don't already have that. And then next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you're implementing action listener so you can actually use it. So you should be extending JPanel and implementing action listener. You want to make sure you have your game start boolean. You want to make sure you have these two buttons, and then after, over here, when you're actually declaring all of your instance variables, first of all, game start should be set to true. And then after, you want to make sure that you create your start button and your restart button. And then these are like the three basic things you have. So you could add other things, but these are the most basic ones. And then, oh, one moment, there we go. Once again, these are going to be your X, Y, width, and height. And then make sure you have this line that will set focusable to true so you can go around clicking things. The next thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and add a few things. So you want to say that if the game is not over, which means you're not at the ending screen, and the game is not starting, which means you're not at the starting screen, then you want to make sure both of those buttons are not visible. You don't want to see them if you're not on the start screen or the end screen. Then if game is over, you want to see that restart button, so make sure you add it back. And if the game has started, you can add the welcome to Space Invaders text, and you can go ahead and add your start button back because you want to be able to start. Then over here, you're going to have this action performed function, which is going to help you catch if any buttons are clicked. Then in the case that the start button is clicked, now your game start is going to be false because you just got out of the start screen, and your game over is still false because you just started the game. It's not over yet. Then if you press the restart button, now your game over is still going to be false, your game start is still going to be false, and then you'll go ahead and just add some enemies. You'll reset the lives and you'll set the level, and it'll just restart. So it won't bring you back to the start screen first. Yeah, and then just make sure you have your set focusable. I think you had this from before. I think that's it for this part. The next thing that you could do is that you could add planets to your background. So you can go ahead and try thinking of how you could add planets to your background, just like the stars, but with images instead of shapes. So try thinking about this, try implementing this on your own, and if you're not completely sure, I'll show you one method in a moment. Okay, so one way to do this is by creating a planet class exactly like your star class, but then instead of doing a shape, you instead have a buffered image, and you set up that image, and then inside of Draw Me, you just go ahead and draw the image. So just make sure you're importing these, make sure you're creating your buffered image, and make sure that you're drawing it with your X, Y, your width, and your height. And remember that when you're trying to upload an image, you're going to go here, upload, and then select your image. Once again, this is an optional thing to do. It's kind of similar to what you did with the stars, so if you don't want to do it, that is totally fine. And then to add the planets to your games, make sure to add an array of planets, make sure you're drawing them, make sure you're animating them so they're moving. So now if I go to the answer key, let's try to run this. So make sure you're running your runner class, not your screen class. Okay, so now we have Welcome to Space Invaders, which is pretty cool. Then we're going to start, and then, okay, so it's acting a bit funky. So here, I know that something might be wrong with maybe my repaint or something like that. So one thing I want to check is that I should not have repaint in my paint component. So if you have it in your paint component for some reason, just go ahead and just comment that out, take it out. So once again, you do not want to have repaint in your paint component. So let me just quickly make a copy of this. And so over here, I have my paint component. Let's try to find that right here. And I'll just take out repaint. And now if I rerun this, okay, we're going to start that one more time. And now it's going to actually update, and I can beat the different levels, though these ones are a lot faster and a bit harder to kill. So now it says you won, and I can restart if I want, and it's going to go back to level 1, which is super duper duper cool. I can also use my cheat key if I want, and yeah, that's about what it should look like with all this stuff added onto it. If you want, you can always add new things, you can add different things, but yeah, that is what the project looks like. So thank you for following along for lesson 5.